Chapter 1. The sound of the organ was resonating through the ancient cathedral when suddenly a fierce noise tore through the solemn atmosphere. From the towering vaulted ceiling came the echo of flapping wings, as though the sky had fallen into the church. The entire sanctuary was engulfed in a strange gust of air, and the flickering candles swayed and then all extinguished at once. The stained glass panels depicting saints trembled in rhythm, emitting soft moans as if they were suppressed cries. And then, in the moment before anyone could understand what was happening, a hawk swooped down with spread wings and eyes glowing like blazing fire. It landed forcefully before the altar, making the wooden pews creak as the parishioners recoiled in panic. Tightly clutched in its sharp, curved talons was a small object that glittered with a silvery sheen. It was a tiny crucifix, stained with dark red streaks. Blood. No one knew where the blood came from, but merely glimpsing it sent a chill through everyone's skin as though a cold night wind had pierced through them. Murmurs rose and spread like an undercurrent. Is it an omen? Could this be a message sent by the Lord? White eyes, trembling hands crossing themselves repeatedly. Fear crept into every breath. Then, amid the chaotic whispers, the storyteller's voice, low and distant, rang out. But that was not merely a strange sign. That was the beginning of a secret that has been buried for decades. Chapter 2. The crowd had not even recovered when a figure in the front row stood up. It was Michael, a middle-aged parishioner with a sturdy build but a face marked by the lines of time. He walked forward deliberately, each step echoing through the silent cathedral. The hawk remained motionless at the foot of the altar, its eyes blazing like a flame waiting. Michael stopped, looking directly at the wild creature. Rather than attack, the hawk suddenly bowed its head and released the silver crucifix from its talons. The small object clattered onto the cold marble floor, producing a long, metallic resonance. All fell silent. Michael bent down, his hands trembling as he picked it up. In his palm, the crucifix glowed with a cold silver light. But what truly shocked Michael was the back. Crude engravings appeared, a solitary letter alongside a strange number. On its surface, a dark, dried blood-stained clung, like a witness to an event from long ago. For a moment, Michael tried to reassure himself. Perhaps someone had dropped it. Perhaps it was mere coincidence. But when he looked up, the hawk's gaze met his own. It was not the look of a bloodthirsty predator, but something else, like a silent plea, as if urging him to understand. In that instant, Michael felt something unexplainable, as if an invisible thread bound him to that creature and to that blood-stained crucifix. He did not know it then, but from that moment, his life would be pulled into a secret that the entire town had deliberately forgotten for decades. Chapter 3. In the days following that event, the hawk returned to Pine Hollow repeatedly. The first time, it dropped a faded cobalt blue cloth with roughly stitched edges forming the letter C. The second time, it delivered an old photograph, the Talons family standing in front of a wooden house, the mother holding a little girl wearing the silver crucifix. The third time, it placed before Michael a tarnished gold ring inscribed with the initials JC, matching the name of the father in a missing person case from 30 years earlier. Each time the hawk delivered a clue, it flew off in a direction. As though leading the way, Michael followed through moss-covered graveyards and deep, dark woods until he stood before a rusted steel hatch half embedded in the stone wall behind the old parish. The hawk perched on it, tapped its beak 3 dry times, then remained silent, waiting. Michael placed his hand on the cold door, though it did not budge. From that night on, he began to lose sleep. In the darkness, he heard someone whispering his name, in the voice of a child. Outside, wind chimes clacked together, producing scattered sounds like a code. Many nights he even saw strange lights flashing in the forest, with an irregular rhythm, as if trying to signal something. Michael recorded everything: the cloth, the photo, the rain, the crucifix. They all seemed to be fragments of a buried story. Townsfolk whispered of the Talons case from long ago. A few claimed they had seen a little girl's shadow dart across the abandoned church. But the more he delved into it, the more that secret appeared shrouded, always missing the central piece. Then, one foggy afternoon, the hawk returned again. It placed a rusty key engraved with the marking E12 into Michael's hand, identical to the inscription on the silver crucifix. Standing before the rusted hatch, key in hand, Michael heard metallic knocking echoing from below. And this time, amid the wind, the whisper was clearer than ever. "Open it." Chapter 4. That afternoon, dark clouds rolled over Pine Hollow like a thick curtain, swallowing even the bell tower. Michael held the rusty key in his hand, a heavy sense of foreboding pressing down on him. He returned to the metal hatch, where the hawk was waiting. It did not make a sound, just stood there, eyes blown like burning coals in the mist. Michael took a deep breath, then inserted the key into the lock. A piercing screech rang out, as if the hinges were fighting back against human will. But at last, the door creaked open, releasing a blast of cold air that carried the musty scent of damp earth and rusted iron. The flashlight in his hand trembled as he aimed it into the darkness. Slick stone steps spiraled downward like a serpent's tongue. He began descending slowly, his heart thudding with every step. Inside, moss-covered stone walls wept with thin trickles of water, dripping down into muddy, sticky puddles. The air was thick and heavy, each breath dragging soil and decay into his lungs. As Michael moved the light across the walls, he saw faint carvings, scattered letters, scrawled by a child's hand. He bent down, touched them, and felt the damp dust and a faint, acrid smell cling to his palm. Then, in the farthest corner, the beam of light stopped. A small figure lay motionless. Michael dropped to his knees. It was the skeletal remains of a child. Delicate bones, the head tilted gently to one side, as if asleep. Around the fragile ribcage was a thin silver chain, from which hung a crucifix identical to the one the hawk had delivered. He recognized it instantly. This was what remained of the little girl in the Collins family photo. Michael's hands trembled as he picked up the crucifix and compared it to the one he had kept. They were identical down to each engraved line, like twins, and in that moment, the truth struck like a church bell split in two. The disappearance 30 years ago was never a mystery of someone getting lost. The girl had not vanished. She had been buried right beneath this very church, in silence and injustice. In that instant, the town's old memories came flooding back. He remembered the whispers about Father Edward Collins, the former priest, and the rumors that he had a child out of wedlock. When the family disappeared, the file had been quickly closed as missing, with no investigation, as if an invisible hand had swept everything away, burying the truth along with it. And now, Michael stood among irrefutable evidence. The little girl had not been taken by God. She had been left for darkness to consume. He collapsed to the floor, holding the silver crucifix close, tears blurring his vision. The pain coursed through his veins, partly his own, partly as if passed on from that small, forgotten body. Suddenly, the hawk let out a piercing, grief-stricken cry above him, the sound reverberating through the crypt, echoing 1,000 times. It circled overhead, wings stirring up dust, as if to confirm that the secret had been revealed. As the flashlight flickered, Michael looked around and saw the clues the hawk had brought all lay here. The torn blue cloth caught on a stone, the old ring lying beside a handbone, the Polaroid photo pressed between cracks in the wall. The hawk had not only delivered hints, it had become the child's voice, carrying buried memories into the light. Michael felt his whole body shake, not just from fear, but from the brutal truth. For all these years, silence had reigned, and now, a wordless being had forced him to hear a cry for justice. He looked up, met the hawk's gaze, and for the first time in his life, he believed there are messengers who do not need words, only wings, to remind us of the justice that has been forgotten. Chapter 5. As the hatch closed behind him, Michael stepped outside. The sky over Pine Hollow had turned to dusk. The last light of day scattered over the church's tiled roof, painting the bell tower a deep copper red. The hawk perched on the cross at the top, watching silently, then suddenly took flight. It soared high into the sky, its wings cutting a sharp black streak across the deepening purple, and vanished toward the mountains. Michael stood still for a long moment, his hands still clutching the silver crucifix. A breeze blew in from the cemetery, carrying the faint scent of incense, like whispers from souls still at unrest. He did not know why the hawk had chosen him, nor how it knew the truth that had been hidden for 30 years. But deep down, he understood. His life would never be the same again. The news spread quickly through town. People gathered at the church, lighting candles along the stone wall, their flickering flames reflected in the stained glass. Some of the elderly wept quietly, whispering the name Collins as if calling back a ghost. No one could explain how the hawk knew the way, or where to find the burial, or how it found the tiny pieces of evidence. They just whispered, in awe and fear. Maybe it was not just a bird. That night, Michael stood alone before the newly raised grave of the child. He whispered a prayer, unsure if anyone was listening. In that moment, a question rose and gripped his mind. Why me? Why was I the one chosen to witness this? Was there an unseen force that picked me to give voice to the forgotten? He looked up. The sky over Pine Hollow had faded into indigo, a thin streak of light barely clinging to the horizon. And there, in the distance, wings moved through the air, slowly, then vanished. Michael closed his eyes, his heart heavy, yet filled with a gratitude he could not name, because in that fleeting moment, he believed that justice could come from anywhere, even from a wild creature carrying a silver crucifix in its talons. Chapter 6. The narrator's voice rose slowly, blending with the sound of church bells ringing. There are bonds that the human eye cannot see, between people and even the beings we once thought were strangers. Sometimes, truth is not awakened by our hands, but by wings from the sky. In the distance, the sound of wings faded into the evening breeze, merging with the long tolling of bells. As darkness settled over Pine Hollow, the whispers of the past seemed to quiet down, leaving behind a faint sense of belief that justice, no matter how long it has been buried, will one day be called by name.